Hello, everyone. I'm going to be starting momentarily. Just making sure everything's connected properly. Yeah, happy Thanksgiving to all our American friends. Oh, hello, Ken Moore. Okay, let's start. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay, so this talk will conclude the series on the 10 samyojana. These are the fetters that bind beings to samsara and that are broken in a specific order. You know, the image of fetters, the samyojana means fetter, and the image is that they're broken. You know, that we're gradually set free. They're broken by the four stages of enlightenment, and the last five, fully half of the list, are still present in the mind stream of an anagami, third stage of enlightenment, and they're only broken by the arahant. So these are the last to go. These are the higher or deeper fetters, and we've dealt with the two kinds of desire for becoming and the I am conceit and restlessness. And to conclude the series today, we're going to talk a bit about avidya, ignorance. The word avidya is exactly cognate to the English word ignorance. It means not knowledge, just as ignorance is means the same thing, gnosis, not lack of gnosis or lack of knowledge. It's a Greek root. The Pali word avidya is not knowing. No. Avidya is perhaps we could say it's the most fundamental root defilement, that everything else really stems from that. It occurs in the dependent origination. Avidya is usually given as the first point of departure. Avidya, because of avidya, we get sankhara, or volitional formations. Avidya is defined in one place. The question is asked, what one is ignorant of what? One is ignorant of the Four Noble Truths. So most of the, or probably all of the Buddhist teachings refer back in one way or another to that fundamental teaching, the Four Noble Truths. Not knowing suffering, the cause of suffering, the ending of suffering, and the path leading to the end of the suffering, this is ignorance. The Arahant is the only being who is completely free of ignorance. Now, this is important to state a caveat here. The fact that an Arahant is beyond ignorance or has transcended ignorance does not mean that an Arahant is omniscient. Even in the case of the Buddha, he specifically never claimed omniscience, although the later tradition seemed to want to come very close to assigning omniscience to him. Already in the Jataka stories, which are considered commentarial, the prose sections, the state of Buddhahood is often referred to as sabbanyutta, or all-knowing, omniscience. But the Buddha himself never claimed this. So the knowledge, or the lack of ignorance of an enlightened being is not. That doesn't mean they would know things like the number of fish in the Ganges River, or or the population of Mexico, or it doesn't mean that they have ultimate mundane knowledge. But what it means is that they understand these Four Noble Truths. In other words, they understand samsara, they understand nibbana. There is no lack of clarity in their mind. Already for a stream winner, there's a lack of false view. The view is purified, but the stream winner is far from being free of ignorance. Ignorance is only overcome with the arahant. Now, there's some further implications of this. I mentioned that in dependent origination, the factor of ignorance is the cause of volitional formations, avijja pachaya sankhara. In the Abhidhamma, it's stated that when the different mental states are analyzed, that the arahant makes no karma. Now, arahant makes no fresh karma, because his actions do not come from ignorance. We can consider a metaphor here, that the ignorant person, that is everyone who's not an arahant, it's like they're blundering around in the dark. If you go into a dark room and you're blundering around, you're tripping over things, you're knocking things off the shelf, you're causing all kinds of havoc. So the ignorant person is, by their actions, they're disturbing the harmony of the universe without knowing what they're doing. Whereas the arahant would be like a person in a room turning on the light and being able to navigate clearly and seeing reality as it actually is. So they're not disturbing anything, and their actions are classed not as kama, but as kriya, or effective. They're just actions in the world, but they're not. They cause no karmic accumulation. Along with avijja, we can say is a related defilement of moha, which is takes a place in the teachings as one of the three roots. The three roots of all wrongdoing and all suffering are moha, lobha, dosa, delusion, desire, and ill will. And these are, in that context, they're extremely general. Like dosa would refer to all kinds of ill will, from mild irritation to anger to hatred. Moha to all kinds of confusion, delusion, and ignorance. But it could also be used as a slight distinction from avijja. That there is a difference between and on a practical level, on a kind of mundane level, there's a difference between being ignorant and being deluded. The ignorant person doesn't know, and it can be a dullness of mind. the ignorant person in the world, the person who's more than if you're not an arahant, you are ignorant in the technical sense, but the more than average ignorant person, they don't know. Their mind is dull. We can many times consider them stupid. But a deluded person, they might be even very intelligent. They might have a lot of worldly knowledge, but they're confused in that they it's not that they don't know, but they know wrongly. They have wrong views and misperceptions and confusions. There's a quite interesting section in the Visuddhimagga that deals with different personality types analyzed according to their dominant defilements, and the suggestions as to what kind of practices are suitable for each personality type. And one of the distinctions is made between the person who's subject to confusion and the person who's subject to dullness. The person who's got a confused mind, or I think the word in the English translation that by Nyanamoli is perplexed, they have a mind that easily tends to proliferation, to scheming and imagining and figuring out, and running off in the mind. And this is often even associated with a higher than average intelligence. Such a person is advised to have as a meditation environment a very restrained environment with little sense distraction. The example given is in a cave. So they don't have, the mind doesn't find things to spin out on, to proliferate on. Whereas the dull person, the advice is exactly the opposite. A good place for them is high up on a hillside where there's a good view, so that it brightens and opens the mind, and cuts through the clouds of dullness. So, like with all these fetters, we'll only overcome them completely when we reach that requisite stage of enlightenment. But we should be working all the time to diminish the fetters. And diminishing ignorance is in the first instance, it's a task for the understanding, for the thinking process, or the cognitive mind at the first level of overcoming ignorance, is to gain some proper knowledge. This is where a study comes in, has value. But that only takes you so far. What's really needed is a deeper level of knowing that comes from experience, from actual direct knowledge, which we get from practice. So the two halves are often cited. The two halves or sides of practice are study and practice. And of the two, the practice is the more essential. It's quite possible for someone to have no book knowledge whatsoever and still gain attainments. In fact, there are many stories in different traditions about the ignorant peasant or farmer who illiterate, who doesn't know any of the teachings formally and is given the simple instructions and attains to high states of enlightenment. There's a story like this in Ajahn Mun's biography about some tribal hill people that the monks stayed close to for a while, and they had never heard of Buddhism, and they're curious who the monks were and what they were doing. And Ajahn Mun just told them, they said, "Why do you sit still for so long, and then you get up and walk up and down and then you sit down some more?" And Ajahn Mun said, "We're looking for Buddho. What's Buddho? Something we've lost a long time ago, and we're trying to find it. Can we help you look?" "Yes." "How do we do it?" "Just sit down and pay attention to your breath and say to yourself, Buddho, Buddho. And then get up and walk and do the same thing." And that's the whole of their teaching. It took me less than a minute to give the whole teaching that these hill people had, and they in very short order, in a few weeks, they were attaining to jhanas and so forth. And there's many stories like this in different traditions. So knowledge in the formal sense is not as essential as actual direct practice, but knowledge can be a benefit. The Visuddhimagga says that knowledge is like the ground from which wisdom can grow. You prepare the ground to grow a crop. This the farming analogy. You prepare the ground to grow a crop, but the crop is something entirely new and valuable related to the ground. There's one more point I wanted to make, is the it may be too obvious even to mention, but the saying, the old saying, ignorance is bliss, is complete folly. That ignorance is suffering. There's we have this. We have, for example, the thumbnail I put up for this. I found a picture of a man sitting on a railway track with reading a newspaper. I'm sure at the moment he feels happy. He's sitting in a nice sunny day reading his newspaper, but he's ignorant of the fact that a train is coming at him at 60 miles an hour. And this is our condition in samsara. If we're ignorant of reality, it doesn't save us from the suffering. In fact, it makes the suffering more intense and more inevitable. So I'll stop there, and we'll have a look at the chat. I see it looks like it's very busy already. Let's see what we got here. If an arhat doesn't create karma, does it mean they do not have intentions? I wouldn't take it that way. I think they still have the mental factor of cetana, or intention, the volitional action, but their actions are pure. Their intentions are not based on ignorance or greed or hatred, so that they're absolutely pure. So they don't disturb anything. They're harmonious with the universe, and so they don't make any karma. Are there oceans beside the oceans of Mount Sumeru? Yeah, there are the oceans in between the mountain ranges, and there's the world ocean outside of the mountain ranges, and they're actually quite different. They have different qualities. The oceans in between the mountain ranges are extremely pure, whereas the the ocean outside is the ocean we know, from this world, that is salt and full of fish and so on. What's the halo behind the Buddha? Yeah, that's an interesting one, because we see an artistic convention both in India and in Europe of holy beings having halos around their heads. Um, I believe that it is uh, on a practical level, it signifies to the viewer of the art that this is a holy person. But I think the origin of it is the emanation of light from a Buddha, or we could say his aura. There are texts that describe the Buddha emanating light from his body, and I think that the halo may have been, at least in part, intended as an artistic representation of that. Besides sila and overcoming hindrances, what are the best places for attaining first jhana, please? Also, when is total seclusion necessary, akin to complete silence for deep studying, as in a library example, for example? Yeah. Now, for first jhana, particularly for first jhana, a quiet place like the physical environment has some importance. It's possible to overcome difficulties like noise and so on, but it makes it much more difficult. If you can have a peaceful, quiet place without disturbances, without noise, particularly, there's a saying that noise is a thorn to first jhana, because sound is a sense impression, and every time that a sound impinges on consciousness, particularly if you pay attention to it, if you let your mind go out to it, then you're being drawn back into the kama bhumi, the sense experience or sense desire plane, and makes it more difficult for you to transcend that plane. So the physical environment is important. Okay. If nibbana is beyond duality, how can it be experienced or known, since experience and knowing are inherently dualistic? It's a completely different kind of knowing. We're not